Well, good evening, all, and welcome to the October 11th Tualatin City Council work session. I'll go ahead and call our evening's meeting to order. We have one item of business tonight, and that's a discussion of the Equity Committee. I know we're tag teaming this between city staff and representatives from City Council, but I think city staff starting the briefing.
Yes, Your Honor. Megan George, our Deputy City Manager, has done some work on this and then facilitated the conversation at the Council Committee on Advisory Appointments. So she'll start it off and then turn it over to the representatives from the Council.
All right. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks. And I've just got a really brief introduction, so I'll jump in. So I am here to provide a brief intro to the Council's discussion on the Equity Committee. The impetus for this topic came from the Council Committee on Advisory Appointments, as Sherilyn said. The committee started talking about this in the late spring, and in early July we met to discuss. I conducted some research of other like committees from across the state of Oregon, which is summarized in a few attachments to your packet this evening. The first is the research summary, and the second is the comparison matrix. So like I said, the CCAA met in early July and have made several recommendations for the council to consider this evening. First, that the council create a temporary ad hoc committee with the initial assignment of refining the scope of work for a permanent committee on this topic. Second, that the council direct this ad hoc committee to consider building and strengthening relationships, as well as lessening barriers to public participation as the primary objectives of the permanent committee. And lastly, they also included some recommendations for who the council should recruit and appoint to serve on this committee, including individuals of varying races, ages, genders, members of the LGBTQ community, people with disabilities, and otherwise underrepresented communities. So as the council discusses the topic this evening, there's a few questions to consider. First, the timing of the committee, when to convene, and the recruitment process for that. In addition, the charter for the committee, what topics should the committee be assigned? Some of those are recommended from the CCAA, but there may be others. In addition, the committee composition. Again, the CCAA has some preliminary recommendations, but there may be other factors the council would like to consider. In relation to that, the council should consider appointing one or more council liaisons to serve on this committee. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor, and others on the council.
All right, so I guess the members of the CCAA are going to present their findings, if you will, or their discussions.
I'll start off on CCAA. When we're appointing people to advisory committees, all of us on the committee were very cognizant of having a diverse group of people on the committees, and that's always a factor in our decision making. And we had this discussion just about, since we have two of our council goals, they have an inclusive committee or community and being connected, engaged with our community, embracing diversity. We felt it's really important to have this feedback from our community, and that it needs to be furthered by having a committee. And then we got into a discussion about what equity and diversity means, and it can be quite an all-encompassing big picture. So that's some of the groups that Megan stated. But in addition, to race, then we said gender identity and ages of people, and disabilities, because we want to consider when we're making decisions all the issues we might not be fully aware of. Just if you like, I can walk down the street perfectly well. So if I can't, there might be issues I would never consider. So that's just an example of, why we want to hear from everybody in our community. So we felt it was important to have this committee, this ad hoc committee, because it's so broad, and the people that would are representing these different different people from our community should be the ones kind of helping to form the decisions of what a possible permanent committee could look like. Also, it's to help get people of diverse backgrounds involved with our city, so we can hear from them more. And I'll leave it to the other two counselors to continue this discussion.
All right, thanks. I assume you're nodding to me.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. In addition to, are you going to put up the matrix later, Megan, or?
I can if that would be helpful.
I think that you did a really great job. I even had people reaching out to me today saying that they were so disappointed they couldn't be here tonight because constituents, because they really thought that they're like, who put together the matrix? So I just want to thank you, Megan, for putting it together and noticing that there's a lot of diversity in the cities and types of places that have developed diversity, equity, inclusion, citizen committee. So I think that having citizen representation at a formalized level would be really great. And especially since our, which I love, our diversity task force has transformed into a wonderful affinity group for the Tualatinos, which is really fabulous. And there's still needs around diversity, equity, inclusion that we've identified as a council. So we thought that maybe a council or a committee, sorry, too many C words, a committee would be a really good place, a good fit for a committee like this. So that was our thinking behind it. And I don't know if anyone else wants to look at the matrix together, but I just thought that there was a lot of good work put into it.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to just add a little bit that thank you, Megan, and the city for listening. We looked at the need of this committee, and I feel personally that this would solidify our intention of really doing what we're saying we're going to do. This is an actual step forward that we're serious about this, and we're not just talking about it, but we're actually taking action. And which I'm one of those people that like to see that. So definitely, really, for me, it's really important because of the that's what we planned our goals, and definitely that we are serious about diversity, not just in the culturally, but definitely everything we have in our community, and include everyone as much as we can. So I thank the city and my fellow committee members that agreed to this, and we're looking forward to something greater and interacting with more people. Thank you.
All right. So Ken, if the matrix is a little wide, do you think it'll show well, Megan, on, because I'm having to scroll back and forth, but.
Yeah, we can try. I can try sharing my screen, see if it works okay.
That's tiny. All right, that's not bad.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Would you like me to run through it?
Sure.
Okay, I'll keep it pretty quick. So just as a preface, this is not a encompassing list of all cities that have some form of an equity committee. These were a few that I was able to get in touch with and find some more information on. So the first is our neighbors, City of Oswego. They had an ad hoc committee that they began in 2019. It was made permanent in 2021. And this isn't reflected on the matrix, but I believe they just hired a coordinator, a DEI coordinator, to work directly with that committee. They had a variety of different tasks associated with with the initial ad hoc committee, including a lot of public engagement. The next is City of Beaverton. This is probably the most advanced DEI committee that I reviewed. They've had something for a long time. They made it permanent in 2013. They have a DEI action plan and have annual goals and deliverables that they provide to the community. Next up is all the way to the east, City of Ontario. They have their Diversity Advisory Board. It's fairly new, although they have been established for a few years. It sounds like this one works on a variety of subjects, including homelessness in Ontario, the census, cultural representation and wayfinding, representation at local events. Scroll back over. Next up is City of Troutdale. So they've had a committee. Oh yeah.
Can I interrupt for a second? So one of the things about the City of Ontario that I really liked is if you click onto that link, don't do it now, but if you click onto the link with the information about their committee, right there, the Ontario Code, it talks about the makeup and that it shall be made up of a variety of different sectors of the community, and that not one group of people can't be the majority on the committee. And I thought that was really a good way of putting out there that, kind of solidifying goals and setting it up for, like, this is what we want to see on the committee in code.
Yeah, related to that, one of the things I found in reading through is that none of them had narrowed their focus to one particular equity area, either race or gender or access. All of them included multiple areas of equity, but I believe Ontario was the only one that explicitly stated that in the composition of their committee, as Sherilyn pointed out. Okay, going on, next up is City of Troutdale. So their public safety board was expanded this last year to include a more important focus on equity as it relates to public safety, but also as it relates to other aspects of the city's ongoing operations. Moving south to Medford. Medford's committee also experienced a change this year. They had the Multicultural Commission, and largely in part to advice and recommendations made by current committee members, they decided to expand the scope so that it was a much larger DEI group. Medford's committee has the ability to take on projects that they're interested in, but they also serve as somewhat of a review board or experts at using DEI lenses to review various city initiatives, including their houselessness plan that they're currently working on. Next up is City of Ashland. Ashland established their committee in this year. Ashland, unlike some of the other committees, their council gave a very specific task list for the committee to work on. One of the initial projects that they were tasked to undertake is working with the local university to study different racial groups in the city of Ashland. And last up is the City of Mcminnville. Their committee is also pretty new. It was established in the beginning of 2021. The committee has met several times, and largely their task has been trying to define what they would like to focus on as a group, which has resulted in a few different changes to the structure of the committee in the initial months. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, but I'm happy to bring it back up if that would be helpful.
Thank you. So what are Megan had some points you made at the end about the steps forward. So what is the committee thought about as far as how to take this next steps? What are your recommendations? So Bridget first, then Valerie. All three of you can chime in. So
Go ahead, Bridget. Yeah, Councilor Brooks.
Well, we like is put on the information that Megan shared. We suggest forming an ad hoc committee. I think that the number of people should be similar to what our other committee memberships look like, so that they're manageable. And I'm cognizant especially of this time on Zoom. So, and we want to also have enough people to fill the committees. That's a concern. So, but we would like to do, I'm thinking a 7-person ad hoc committee with a council liaison. So if anyone's interested in council that wants to step forward to help develop the scope of work and the and so that we can put it in the charter in a way that makes sense, not only to council, but to the people that are impacted and involved in the committee.
So I think our idea was tonight we'd like to hear from the rest of council if you would like to move forward. If you think there are, I guess, different equity groups we're not considering or we shouldn't try to include. And then from city staff, we want to know how this would fall into your, workload, because that's never low. And also, we would like to ask if it's okay with everyone that CCAA actually be the one to interview the people for the committee and recommend them to council. Those are the next steps we see going forward.
I concur.
Councilor Sacco has her hand up.
I just want to say thank you for those of you who brought this forward. I think it's very important work, and I fully support this this idea. And I agree with the list that Megan shared. I think was very encompassing. I can't, off the top of my head, think of anything that she missed, but I definitely don't think we should exclude those people. But I think we should work really hard to reach all of those communities. My fear is that we don't get the response from all of the groups, and then we don't have a complete group. So I think that would be something that would be really important to me, is to make sure that we are reaching out to all the groups we can think of to get interest, and really, really pushing this group out in the community so we have a diverse group. My fear is that we'll get the same group of people that are volunteering for everything in the city. And so I think we just need to make it really clear of what we're looking for. And a lot of these things that were laid out with these other cities were very clear, as Sherilyn pointed out. And I think that we can't be afraid to lay things out very specifically and using specific language so we do all the groups justice, and don't focus on one area. I think Megan had mentioned that none of the groups have really collapsed their focus, which I think would be very important as well. So I think it's all great work, and I'm really excited that this is taking shape. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I agree, Kristen. Thanks very much. As part of the idea of the group, and I think that piece that you pointed out with the city talking about the different groups of people that we're reaching out to is really important, and that we have diversity on the group, and that we, like you said, do make a really good effort to reach out to all the groups. And the worst thing that could happen is we get better at doing that. So,
and I think that everything starts slow and baby steps. I think that's how all committees probably started, with a couple of people here and there, and then kind of having the idea. And so it's not going to be something that we might see like an explosion right away, or it could be, we don't know, but at least have that well, we're serious about this. We're not, we really want to diversify and want to make sure that we include everybody. And it's just it might take a little longer than other things, but I think that it's a good step going forward. And I think that I agree with everyone who said we're going to have specific, that way we have representation from most groups, but not overwhelm with just one group.
I want to say one more thing too. Just being on the committee for the council advisory committee, we do see all these volunteers that come through and people that aren't able to volunteer because we don't have enough space for everybody a lot of the times. So even though we might not see them at council all the time or at some of the community gatherings, there are a lot of people that are volunteering on committees that are diverse. And I think there's more people volunteering on committees than sometimes we think about, and that I would have really known if I wasn't on the advisory committee. So I just wanted to also lay those. We do have really good advertising we do for the committees. We do have really good interests when we have the committees. And I also think that this interest areas of interest to a lot of people in the community. So I'm hopeful that we get a strong response. And I'm also confident with the city staff between Megan and Nicole and Sherilyn and everybody else that works towards reaching out, that we have such a great team that makes me feel more confident too about this endeavor. And Betsy.
Others. Councilor Hillier.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who put this idea forward and is moving it forward. I'm really excited and happy to be part of this discussion. And I think people with othering needs and different diverse groups, affinity groups and such in the community are really forming their voices. And now is just really a perfect time for us to move this forward, as others have stated. And I not only would be very interested in being part of this work as the council, but will support the work in any way possible.
Thank you. I'm fully supportive of this. As Sherilyn knows, I've always been fascinated with the real folks at NLC and the things they're able to accomplish. Real has lots of case studies how committees like this were formed, put together from cities our size and even smaller. So we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. We could look at some of the things that have been done, some of the things that have been successful. And those cities that have won awards from NLC for doing something like this. Every year, it seems the 2-3 years that I went to NLC most recently, just amazing little cities coming up with DEI committees that are run by their citizens along with some city staff. So I think it's a great idea. I hearken back to the days of Tualatin Tomorrow. Tualatin Tomorrow started with an ad hoc committee, a small committee, and then put together the structure for the full committee. It took several months for the ad hoc committee to do their work, but then with the whole framework was laid out and the full formal Tualatin Tomorrow took over after that for several years. Back when Mayor Doyle in Beaverton, I was always fascinated by what they did in Beaverton. This is one of his pet subjects when he became a mayor, and ushered this through in Beaverton. Beaverton to me is like the gold star standard, if you will, of DEI because of the work they've done. But as Councilor Reyes said, it's going to take years to get where they are. I look at LO. LO's been doing this just for a 3 years. So, we've got people we can work with to see what works, what doesn't work. I remember the biggest thing, as you're mentioning, is when you go do this outreach for those 7 persons and eventually maybe a fuller committee, all of us, tap into our networks to make sure, ages, sexual orientation, races, everybody we know can get, who's interested, we get involved, and we might not be, you might find someone who's a leader in that community who can do better outreach than we can. I think that's one of the things Real always said is you find a leader in the community, they'll do the work for you and they'll find an ideal candidate that you're not even aware of. So I think this is a terrific idea. It's just a matter of what it comes down to, of course, is staff capacity over the next several months and putting this together. I know it's going to be a struggle with Zoom because it might not be a struggle. It might be easier with Zoom because you don't have to go to a meeting. But some people have Zoom fatigue, but this might make it a lot easier that you don't have to leave your home. And it's going to be a little bit easier to get this going a little bit faster because meetings will be easier. So what does the next steps do you envision? If it looks like you have the full support of the council, what are the next steps you suggest? Megan, you have your hand up.
I just have a few clarifying questions. I think I hear support for a 7-member committee with 1 council liaison. Is that correct?
I don't know if we can put a number on that right now. I understand we don't want it as big as a giant committee of 30 people, but I think right now I personally would have put a number, but definitely a liaison from the council, like anyone here can, one of us that we can select or elect to be part of this or assign. But I wouldn't put a number of like 7 people because then you don't know.
You can always do, I think back when we did 12 and tomorrow, it was just a max. There wasn't a specific number. It was just a maximum number of members that could be on the ad hoc.
Oh, that makes sense.
This way it could fluctuate.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I would think, yeah, maybe that, what do you think, 7 to 10 range? Because, sometimes, and it's just been our experience on the advisory committees, that sometimes we have, 2 openings and we have 5 people. And if we get interested people and it's just covering the bases of every different group, then it'd be kind of hard not to include them. Yet again, we don't want it to be insanely large where, those, I think we've all been on those big committees and they can be cumbersome and hard to guide, I guess is the way to put it.
I guess one of the things that I would say is that maybe for the ad hoc committee, the number is less important than for the ultimate equity committee. And so, I mean, maybe that's one of the things that the ad hoc committee looks at is what should the number be and, kind of what number can encompass the representation that you're trying to find. But I would also be careful about putting a number on this because it could be that we'll get a lot of interest. And I mean, we don't want it to be 30, but frankly, if you got 30 like diverse community members that wanted to be involved in the development of this, it's like, really, you're going to turn them away? So it would be more challenging as a staff. And yeah, I agree that those can be kind of frustrating, but I think that would be a good problem to have, frankly.
Right. I like the idea of having the ad hoc committee to be, or the group to be, whoever can join. And from that group, maybe we'll have like the group that's going to be more involved, because sometimes they come and they're like interested, but they're not. Then they finally hear about it and they're like, really, I'm not interested. So I think I agree with Sherlyn.
Okay.
If I could just pipe in, sorry. We will need a number at the end of the ad hoc committee, so we know what the quorum is for public meeting purposes. So the ad hoc committee is still a public meeting, so we would need to know whenever you decide however many that's going to be, that we would need to know what that number is.
Yeah, and as somebody described, like so we recruit, so we put this out, we recruit, and then we set interviews that the Council Committee on Advisory Appointment interviews and makes a determination, a recommendation to the broader council, and then the council appoints. And so there would be like membership in you would be appointed to this ad hoc committee. So then you could do as the city attorney says, you'd have a quorum and there would be minutes and they'd be noticed and all of that. But that's how I would see it going down.
So Sean, could that number be determined after the city appoints the people, or at what point do we have to have that number? It would be before they meet.
Correct. Yeah. So as the city manager described, that process is perfect. And so at that end, whenever you decide to appoint, you have 13 or 30, that would then determine that number.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to limit it just to one counselor or possibly two?
I'd like
I
to,
will, sorry, go ahead. Valerie.
sorry, Maria, I just wanted to hear if anybody would be interested.
Well, I think Councilor Harrier already said she's interested.
I was thinking limited to one because we already do the interviews. There are three of us that do interviews and do the kind of like interact with the candidates, and then we assign them. So I would say the actual committee that's going to be having the minutes and the quorum and all that, maybe one, kind of like what we have for the commission for other committees.
Because I know, I think Councilor.
I don't want to intimidate people. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes when we have city officials or I don't want to intimidate people or feel intimidated by city officials.
I mean, I think having two would be good in the event one couldn't make it. And I think, isn't Councilor Sacco, aren't you also interested? So you've got Councilor Hillier and Councilor Sacco interested in doing it. So you have two councilors ready to go who would want to be part of this effort. And also, you know, there'll be meetings where they both can't make it. So if one's there, at least one's there, that's great. In my opinion.
I'm good with two as well, especially, I mean, this is for the ad hoc committee, especially for if we get a large number of people, like 30 people or something like that. I don't see any problem with two counselors. I think it's great that Councilor Hillier and Councilor Sacco are interested in the ad hoc committee. Thank you both.
I also think it shows our council's commitment if we have two people there.
Yes.
You know, it shows that we're very serious about this.
Yep, I agree.
But we're treating this as we treat the other committees, right? Like where you have an alternate or an actual assign, or is this just? You're
going to decide that in the ad hoc committee.
It's just,
got it.
Be back.
Yeah,
back
this is
a Tualatin tomorrow with two counselors.
Got it. Okay.
But
I'm with it.
maybe in the final committee, that will be the recommendation from this ad hoc committee to only have one counselor.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
So other questions you had, Megan?
One more, sorry. Also think that I heard general support for having a similar requirement that Ontario did, that there not be more than 50% of one particular group represented in the committee. So not this position will be this group, this position will be this group, but a more general expectation that the membership will be diverse. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can I just say something to that too? I like that, and I would take out I also want to leave room for intersectionality. So if there were, a person that fell under a couple of different pieces, that wouldn't count against any of them, that we would have that count towards intersectionality. So I think keeping that in mind is really important in the conversation.
Perhaps related, maybe a similar approach to the number of committee members, that requirement isn't explicit in the application materials.
And then as far as staff capacity and your work plan in the next coming months, when do you think this process, the recruitment process, could start? And then having bandwidth to, I'm assuming it's Betsy and Megan, to put this under your portfolio of additional duties as assigned.
Yeah, we need to put our heads together and talk a little bit about it. I think you're right, Mayor. It'd be Megan and under Megan and Betsy's purview. And I, thinking about, do we hire somebody to come in and help us with the facilitation of this, or the kind of the development of it? But I want to put my head together with Megan and Betsy about it. But I could see this being a fairly, extensive process. It's like you go through the recruitment and then the interviews and then kind of the the storming, like the charter development and kind of organizing, and that might not, here we are, middle of October, like recruitment, we may not even have a first meeting until into 2022. And then I could see, struggling around a little bit for how to, what we're after. So it could be a 6-month process once the group starts meeting.
Yeah, that again, I'm harkening back to 12th and tomorrow. That ad hoc group met, seems almost like a year before we launched. It was quite a while. And then as far as the case studies I read from Real, I think every city initially hired a consultant because they just didn't have the bandwidth or the skill set to put something like this together, and everyone went out initially with a consultant who specialized in this. Okay. Any other questions, comments? You have what you need to move on, Charlotte and Megan?
Well, I want to point at Megan about the charter for the ad hoc. Do you feel like we have enough for that, like, to advertise?
I think loosely, if the council is in agreement about what the CCAA included, just generally speaking, to remove barriers and to, what was the other one? Build and strengthen relationships with community members. I think those give general categories that we can then determine more specific tasks to work under. If there are other more general categories that the council would like to consider, that would be helpful to know.
One thing I always appreciate with Beaverton's is, and this is probably years down the road, is they also use this as a leadership training kind of program to develop folks in their community who can, become city councilors, be involved in their committees and the like. So it's almost like a leadership. Part of it is a leadership training program to mentor, members of all different factions of their city to be part and involved in the city. Councilor Pratt.
That's the piece I forgot to mention because I think it's and we do this in the advisory committees too. We're really hoping we're getting people that can become comfortable with being on city committees and maybe potentially be future counselors and leaders in our community.
And I think Beaverton has done very well in that, based on the track record of their leadership training. That's one of the big successes of their program. But again, they've been doing it for almost 10 years. So, okay. Is that everything you need, Megan and Shirley? Sounds like you got unanimous support here. Terrific. All right.
Thank you.
So that brings us to council meeting agenda review, communications, and roundtable. So I think tonight for the pledge, let me see. I think Maria did it last week, so I think it's Councilor Sacco's turn tonight. And then as far as the proclamation, who would like to do the proclamation for the Long-Term Care Residents' Rights Month? Okay, Councilor Pratt, you got it. Remember that after our moments of silence for those who've lost their lives due to COVID-19, Councilor Sacco will have some words about Indigenous Peoples Day today, the first official holiday here in Oregon of Indigenous peoples. Going on to consent agenda. I just want to give you a heads up. I will be asking to remove item number 4 from consent. That's the purchase of body-worn cameras, tasers, digital evidence storage, maintenance, and support. The reason for that is I'd like a little bit more discussion about it. Not that anything is wrong with it. I just want more people to be aware of it, and let Chief have a few moments to describe what's involved with the program and the benefits to the community. And so any other questions with any other items on consent? All right. So with that,
Mayor, may I address Sherilyn, please?
Sure.
Sherilyn, were you able to, was that a correction?
I am sorry, I was not able to get an answer to that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in the break, I can
Okay.
get with Nicole about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, sure. All right. With that, we'll start our communication roundtable, and I'll start with Councilor Sacco.
Thank you. I attended the C4 retreat last weekend, and I am actually going to reserve all the details for Valerie because I have an alternate. But I did go and learned a lot, but I'll let her share the details. That's about it.
Thank you. Councilor Brooks.
On Monday, the 4th, I attended the Council Committee on Advisory Appointments. We had the pleasure of interviewing several members for the Library Advisory Committee and including one student. And as we're having this conversation, which I really appreciate the conversation with everyone tonight, to see the students that come through from the first interviews to the second interviews, it's astounding the amount of development and change that and confidence that, and I'm telling you, I feel like they're going to be my boss in about 5 minutes every time because they're just so confident. It's really an articulate and it's just really a pleasure. So we have more wonderful applicants than we can put on all the time, but I just want to thank everybody on that has come to volunteer in the community and remind people that there's always volunteer opportunities available at our library. On Wednesday, the 6th, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium. It was the first one that I fully chaired, so I'm really proud of that. And Nick Westendorf and Heidi Springer, our Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer, both joined me there. It used to be Jeff, and we approved the City of Scappoose to join. They had a membership request, so we approved them to join, and we participated in breakout sessions regarding the 5-year strategic plan that was developed in 2018. And I was proud that the consortium did it with breakout groups and had people that have served on the committee for a long time, as well as new members, really kind of dig into what the strategic plan is about and put feedback in. And I will say that every city that was in my breakout room talked about their concerns around climate change and the impact of water. So just to know that that's part of the conversation. And one of the other things that came up is personnel concerns. And so some of the money that will be budgeted this year, increased expenditures will be about personnel for water departments, and just noting that there's shortage for qualified people in cities that do this kind of work. And I just want to share my gratitude again. I've worked a long time on this appointment with Nick, our Public Works Deputy Public Works Director, and just want to thank him and make everyone mindful that that's happening across our region. Another one of the side effects of the pandemic. And there's also going to be Russian ads. There's a lot of work that goes towards more interpretation and access. And they're also putting more money into the digital campaign, so diversifying that way. If anybody wants any more information or all the big, huge packets sent to them, just let me know, and I'm happy to forward that along. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Hillier.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not attend any city meetings this last time, but I did. October is a heavy month for a lot of important days to think about. And I did want to point out that yesterday was World Mental Health Day. It's every year on October 10th. And the goal of that campaign is to raise mental health awareness, and so that each of us can make a contribution to ensure that people living with mental illness can live better lives with dignity. And so especially as we're talking about people with othering needs, thought it was important to point out Mental Health Day. And hopefully everyone did have a good mental health day break yesterday. And there are always resources to reach out to. So that's all.
Thank you. Councilor Pratt.
Like Councilor Sacco said, I attended the C4 retreat, which was on Zoom. Not quite as fun as going to the end of the mountain, but we did have good discussions. A lot of it was on transportation, and we had a lot of the, the alternates there. So it was really kind of nice to have a bigger group to talk about these things. We were asked to discuss our big traffic goals to solve, and so I spoke about the need for interconnectivity from our feeders across our town to the workplaces and then out Borland Road. And Councilor Sacco spoke more to the need to deal with our traffic congestion issues on Boone's Ferry Road. So we kind of tag teamed on that one. And the other thing from that came out was everybody was asked what their most important issue was. And it really made me sad that we're dealing. I mean, I think housing and climate were the big ones, but all the issues people brought up were just such basic needs type of things. And it was kind of sad in a way to me that we're not dealing with, I don't know, the arts or something a little higher level. We're talking about people having a place to sleep and having air to breathe. So it was, a little interesting that that's where we're at. We had the CCAA meeting for the Library Advisory Committee, which Councilor Brooks spoke to. Our Land Acknowledgement and Indigenous People, Land and Indigenous Peoples Acknowledgement Group met. I think that will be our last meeting, and that will be presented in a work session soon to Council. So I'm looking forward to that. And I went last week, was it Thursday? I don't know, Mayor Bubenick went too, and we did the F-Lottie Walk to Bike to School Day. And it was, luckily, it might have been Wednesday because it poured the day before, and we had a beautiful morning, and it was a lot of fun. So that was just a fun little event to get to do.
Right. Thank you. Councilor Reyes.
Just the CCAA meeting, the interviewing candidates. It's always a pleasure, like my fellow councilor said earlier. It's just meeting people, and yes, we always, it amazes me all the people that want to volunteer, and so having this new committee hopefully would include them, because I never see them or meet them anywhere else other than this when we interview them during our CCAA meetings. So I always wonder, where are they? Who are they? Where do they live? Because it just amazes me how many people want to volunteer. We hardly have any spots for them, and we want to be able to move people to a direction where they can continue finding an opportunity to volunteer. So that's always a fun thing to do. The young people are always encouraging, inspiring. I'm just always in awe because I can never speak in public like that at 16. So, or in front of anyone. So people, we have a great community. So thank you very much for all those that take their time to fill out that application and come and meet with us. And we hope we can find a spot for you and your heart where you want to volunteer the most. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Grimes.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to just express my appreciation for everyone who worked on pulling together the ideas for an ad hoc committee. I think that it's so important, and I'm so glad we're going in that direction. And I apologize if someone mentioned this in the discussion earlier that I might have missed, but Counselor Hillier always reminds me when I see her and I think about the work that she does about some of the just absolutely smashingly outstanding kids we have in the high school and some of the leadership roles they take and some of the great things they do. And so I'm hoping with this new committee that we could maybe reach out to them and as one of our categories and different groups we try to get, that we look, to incorporate young people and up and coming Tualatin residents, future employees, as one of the groups that we seek representation from, because we do have amazing people with amazing experience that live in the community, and we've just got some outstanding kids. And I'd like to get our young people as involved as possible in all of our committees, including this one, because I think we've got a lot of really important stuff to teach us. So that's it for me.
All right. Thank you. All right. Going back the last couple of weeks, on the 30th of September, I attended the Greater Portland Inc. Economic Summit, along with Don Hudson and Jonathan Taylor. The keynote speaker there was Kofi Bonner of Bedrock Investment. Why he was the keynote speaker is he's one of the people leading the charge to bring Detroit back from where it's been. A lot of folks are feeling, he even mentioned that where Portland is today is where some of Detroit was 10 years ago. And it's taken them 10 years to bounce back from the issues they've had in Detroit. And that has included a lot of private investment, plus a lot of public and private investment tax credits to bring Detroit back, and very creative use of empty space and repurposing space. That he had some amazing shots of before and after of downtown Detroit that made a lot of impact about the amount of money brought into town and leveraged, and the creative processing process of hey, we've got this big empty lot in the middle of downtown, and they may turn it into a drive-in during the summer. That brought people downtown and reinvigorated the businesses around it. So lots of really cool ideas have been used in Detroit to bring it back to from where it was at. So that was a really good meeting to go to. As Councilor Pratt said, we did walk and bike to school on the 6th. Funniest quote, kids come up with the funniest things to say. I'm walking behind a kindergartner. As I'm walking by our police officers, I'm greeting them by name. He turns to me and goes, "Why do you know all the police? Do you get in trouble a lot?" Just cracked me up, and his mother was laughing, but it was terrific. And seeing the popularity of Boomer, the person who was playing Boomer didn't get a break. Kids at Bridgeport love Boomer. So much kudos to her. Later that day, the Tualatin Historical Society did an interview with me. It was streamed on Zoom, about an hour long. Larry McClure asked the questions and Ross Baker was the cameraman. They had 15 questions. They were really good questions. Plus they had some ad hoc ones. I guess they're going to post it up on their website and make it part of their library of interviews with mayors. On the 8th, the Washington County Mayor's virtual lunch was held, and this one had two really good subjects. The first being community actions, rental assistance program update. Kemp Shuey and Catherine Galeen presented. Here's a number you might want to have available for folks. If someone is interested in rental relief, the phone number to call is 503-615-0770. The phone lines open at 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday. They've staffed up a community action. They're only short 2 people right now. They only have 2 vacancies on the rental assistance program, so they've put a lot of people on this. You can also do an online request. So if you go to the web, and they're at CAOWASH, so CAOWASH.org. They will accept online applications, but only from the 1st to the 15th of the month. So between March of 2020 through September 21, they've served and helped 3,851 households with rental assistance, giving out about $30 million. They have 887 houses in safe harbor, which means they cannot be evicted at this point because they're going through the process with community action. They have an 82% non-payment eviction cases get dismissed at the court level when CAO gets involved. So they've been doing phenomenal efforts at the court level to make sure people do not get evicted. 66% of the funds that have been dispersed are to communities of color in Washington County. If you are serving an eviction notice, you need to get a hold of community action right away because they will issue a letter that you're going to need before your first appearance. If you don't have that letter at your first appearance, you're at a loss with your landlord. But what's nice about this is community action will also be there in court with you to help you through the process if you're going through this. They have forecasted a $42 million need in Washington County, but funding levels right now is at $31.7 million. That's between the state and county. They were very happy and thanked us for the extension ordinance that we did. Because again, they mentioned about the 65 days of processing to get an application done and put through the system and checks issued to their landlord. The second item that was presented is there was a group of folks in Washington County who are looking to model the Multnomah County Preschool for All program. I sent you their presentation. They're hoping to have on the ballot by November 2022 some type of tax mechanism that will fund universal preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds in Washington County. The mayors were supportive of this in general, because of course you always want to see what's going to cost. But the big ask was, why are we doing this at the county level? This should be done at the state level. The state needs to step up. We can't do this county by county. The state of Oregon should figure out how we can have universal preschool for all through the whole of Oregon, and not just cherry pick counties, which we'll see what they can put together. Because I know that's another thing folks are thinking about. Maybe the next legislature is taking this on, especially if some of your most populous counties are taking on the challenge getting these kids into preschool. And that's it for me. So anything else before we adjourn and take a little break? All right, with that, I'll go ahead and close our work session, and we'll have you all back with happy chipper faces in about a half hour.